I hope that you're enjoying these classes. The series is called Be Prepared to Heal. And so far, we've talked about how the body heals with the energy it produces. Also, we've talked about bruises and bumps. And today, we're going to talk about cuts and scrapes. These classes are for informational purposes only. There is a time between an accident or an incident that occurs and when professional help is arrives. Sometimes that can be 10 minutes, and sometimes in a waiting room it can be a couple of hours. So it would be really helpful to help your body heal whatever is happening faster. uh, the faster you address something, the quicker it can heal. And sometimes, like we talked about in the class with bruises, that can last like 2 weeks. Well, I don't know about you, but I certainly don't want to deal with discoloration and bruising for weeks. So if you didn't get that class, go ahead and link in the description below to the class, and you can uh, read all about or hear all about that. My name is Mary Bourne. I'm a traditional naturopath. So in other words, I use a varied amount, they call it eclectic amount of remedies and ways to heal naturally. Natural healing has occurred for centuries and thousands of years. Sometimes those remedies included herbs, and sometimes it was a method that they used. These methods and herbs are used on humans, and they work. They've stuck around for centuries because they are obviously helpful. So, and oftentimes, not only humans, but these remedies have been used on pets and even farm animals. So the suggestions that I make are well known in natural healing. I do have some references in the footnotes or the description below. It's a gray box. You click on it and more information will show up. If you are on a smartphone, you may see a little chevron or down arrow, and you click on that and it too will come up. But you know what? Accidents happen, and sometimes they can be avoided and sometimes not. When my children, I don't want to tell you how many years ago, century or decades ago that was, uh, I made up something called a boo-boo spray. And I didn't like using chemicals on their wounds that would hurt or sting. So I made up this boo-boo spray. And basically what I would do, I would spray their wound and then with a clean cloth, dab it. But the spray was filled with silver gel or silver shield liquid, aloe gel, and some lavender. And these are well known for their ability to be antimicrobial and healing to the body. Now, I am not a medical doctor, and I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm giving you what I have done and the suggestions that I found off the internet that you can find as well from reputable sources. So I'm basing what I'm telling you on my history as a mother and a grandmother and traditional wisdom. So it's not, I'm not prescribing. That's not what I do. Naturopaths do not prescribe. We look at the body as a whole and we assess and say, what is going on here and how can I support healing? So many times children especially will run, they'll scrape, they injure themselves. Now, the skin is our first line of defense. And so we want to protect it. It's there for a reason. And so you wear proper clothing, you wear shoes, you do, whatever. But like I said, accidents happen. And whether it's a knee scrape or a elbow or whatever has occurred as far as a cut, you want to do something that is antimicrobial. So the first thing most recommendations will do is tell you to wash your hands, make sure you're not dealing with dirty hands, then wash the wound. And that's why I really like the spray, because when you wash the wound, it isn't scraping it further. You're not injuring. You can get at the wound and clean it without hurting it or making the child feel like you're going to create more problems. Now, also, one of the things that I learned was that if it was just a scrape like that, just gently cupping the wound and sending your energy or God's energy into that wound to help it heal. If you can do that, I think that there's a huge benefit to this. We have healing energy. I think it comes from the spirit through us, and you don't have to be a Reiki specialist or anything like that. You have that energy in you. You can, there's plenty of books and things like that that discuss this energy. So I don't really have time in this segment to talk about it, but one of the interesting things you can do to know that you really have energy is to do something called creating an energy ball. And you actually cup your hands, cup your fingers to create like a ball. And it doesn't take much to send that energy, and all of a sudden you feel like there is a ball there. It's a really interesting experiment. Now, the second thing is apply ointment. Now, a lot of places will tell you to put Vaseline on it. I'm going to talk about that later and what kind of ointment I use. Then you want to cover it to keep out infections. So you put a sterile gauze bandage on it to keep out infection. In most cases, you don't want to put anything like plastic or you need the air, the oxygen to get in there to help it heal. And then this wound the dressing should be taken off after 24 hours and checked. Now, one of the reasons for an ointment is that this wound will seep, and as it seeps, it causes a stickiness to occur. And there's nothing worse than taking a bandage off that sticks to a wound. So putting some kind of an ointment on there is really, really beneficial. Now, there's also heat that comes to the area, and the heat is there as an infection fighter. But then after a short amount of time, that heat can cause congestion. And so putting something cold like an ice pack or a cool cloth over the wound can sometimes be beneficial. You sometimes will need to apply pressure to stop the bleeding, but you do not want to apply a tourniquet because a tourniquet will actually, it's used when the wound is so bad that if you don't stop the bleeding, you will die of blood loss or shock. So it's important to assess the situation, know what's going on. Remember that blood is nature's way of cleansing the wound and also to bring healing chemicals to that area. It brings fiber and collagen for healing. It can be very beneficial, but there you have to make a choice. Is this too much blood, or is it sufficient to create wound healing? I have included in the description below a sheet that I think is really, really beneficial. It's by Positive Parenting, and it's a one-page sheet that you can put in your medicine chest or put on your refrigerator, but it's what to do in case of cuts and scrapes, and the steps that you take and the severity of those wounds. It addresses all the way to the finger being cut off. Pretty gross. But anyway, I think it's a really good thing for every family to have a sheet and discuss it with the older children so that they too know what to do. You know, when I was babysitting, I had taken a first aid course, and I was babysitting for 5 children. And I also was in charge of making meals and things like that. So I was in the process of cleaning up the dishes, and I looked out, and the 2.5-year-old was sitting by the sandbox, and I could see what was going on. And he had a friend with him. And I don't know, I was paying attention to the 2.5-year-old that I was responsible for. This little boy was like 4. He went into the parents' garage and found a hammer and came out and hit the 2.5-year-old with the hammer. Now, granted, a 4-year-old doesn't have a lot of power, but it is still, a blood wound is extremely, really bleeding profusely. And I saw that. I grabbed some ice out of the freezer. I went outside. I put the ice on his head, knew enough how to take care of the wound, had the older child call the parents and say, come home, there's been an accident, and we need their help. And they were there within a half hour. They had gone out to dinner. So I had been applying the ice, holding it tightly to this child's head to suppress the bleeding. And actually the ice was cleaning the wound at the same time. And I had a cloth over that and holding him and talking to him. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It was more for me as a 15-year-old. It was more about me being, I'm okay. But when they came back from seeing the doctor and putting in the stitches, that doctor told them, whatever your babysitter did, she saved this child's life. That created such an impact on me that I feel it is important for every family to know what to do in case of emergency. Because if I had waited for 911 to arrive, that child would have bled to death. And so it is important. Accidents happen. It doesn't matter how careful you are. They just occur. And the best thing you can have is the ability to handle the situation. And the more you know, the more you're going to be able to handle the situation. How often does that happen? Rarely. But these minor things, it's like a stitch in time saves 9. If you can address the situation quickly within the first 10, 15 minutes, you generally can cut the time of healing in half. So know what to do. Share these videos with other people so that they too have some tools that they can work with. Now, instead of using Vaseline, Vaseline is a petrochemical. Other petrochemicals are kerosene and gasoline. So there is no way. Where do you think that Alene comes from? It's it's a byproduct of the petro industry, and that's not something I want to have on my body. So I have something I call a healing salve. In fact, I have many healing salves I've used throughout the years, different ones that have comfrey in it. They have antimicrobials, they have essential oils. This one is black because it has charcoal in it, and I call it my drawing salve. So what it is used for basically is to draw out toxins. Charcoal is an adsorbent. So in other words, it's like a magnet and it pulls out toxins. So to put it on something, I've had splinters that I couldn't pull out overnight come out, be laying there on the surface of my skin. If I've been bitten by something, I apply it. Mosquito bites, they don't itch anymore until you take a shower. Then you increase circulation, and sometimes it aggravates the toxin. And I immediately put the drawing salve on it, and within 15 minutes, again, there's no more itch, no more burn. I've used it for so many different things. It has lavender in it. It has coconut oil. Yeah, it charcoal, coconut oil, and some beeswax for thickening, and a little bit of lavender. And it smells great. I usually keep my salves in the refrigerator so that they don't go bad too quickly. I put them in small containers so that they stay fresh longer. I don't like using those big tins because they have a tendency to go bad after a long time. And you never want to stick your own hand into the salve. You want to use like a toothpick or some kind of a wooden stick, or even a popsicle stick works really well. So these compounds can be very beneficial to have on hand. There's a special place in my refrigerator I keep them, and everyone in the family knows where to get it. Most essential oils are antimicrobial, so they can be very beneficial, and you don't add it while everything else is melting. You add it at the very end. I do have a video on making a basic salve that I'll try and link in the description below. So I urge you to use something more natural than Vaseline. I actually, there are some places that recommend using Vaseline on a burn, which is going to be the subject matter for our next class. Do not ever use that on a burn, because they have to scrape that off to get to the burn when you take somebody to urgent care. So no, it actually will plug up the pores. So I think with a few tools on hand, you can feel much more comfortable about handling basic emergencies that happen in the home, and you know when to identify you need something more. So the first thing is you want to make sure that you're assessing that situation. Now, one of the things is a word from our sponsor. I love Nature's Sunshine, is the herb yarrow. I've helped many women who have had excessive bleeding with their menses by them taking yarrow. Now, it doesn't stop the bleeding. You don't want to stop menses, but you certainly do want to control it. If you're bleeding too much, it can be harmful. There are other things that should be addressed if there is too much bleeding. You obviously should be seeing somebody for that. But the herb yarrow is known for it's an astringent herb, so it puckers up and tones the tissue and can help tighten it up. And that's what you need when you're bleeding, is you need something. They used to call the styptic pencil. I know when my dad would shave, he would grab this little, it was like a opaque white pencil, it looked like, and he would dab it on his skin. Now, some people would take toilet paper, which, you know, mops up the wound, but it doesn't really help the healing. The astringency of yarrow is beneficial for toning the tissue and helping the healing process. Whereas if you've ever used toilet paper, if you take it off too quickly, you're still bleeding. So that's not really the answer. Whereas a styptic pencil, it seemed like my dad would rub it on there and then that'd be the end of it. He didn't have to use anything else to staunch the bleeding. You know, healing takes time, and it really depends on what you use and how you use it and how quickly you use it, and how much of it that you use that makes the difference. And so I encourage you to do your own research. If you would like some of the yarrow or lavender oil, I'll link discount in the description below, and you can get 25% off of your product. So what have we learned so far? We've learned that clean hands and clean the wound are really, really important, that we want to staunch the bleeding, apply an ointment that can help assist the healing process. You know, the blood delivers collagen to the area, fiber to the area, and it actually creates its own healing process. And if you use an ointment that helps the body in that way, you're halfway there. You want to dress the wound, make sure you're using sterile cloths to apply to the wound. Assess if, now sometimes you can assess right away that 911 is needed. Other times you can do your whatever you know as first aid, and then you think, okay, it's not working, then make sure that the 911 knows what to do. Above all, remain calm. When you are in an agitated frame of mind, you're actually increasing circulation and blood flow, and you really want to do the calming. That's why I really loved the boo-boo spray, because the lavender would scent the area and create a sense of calmness. Now you can clean the wound with like chamomile tea. That also is something as a possibility. So if you don't have water available, of course, if you're camping, it would be ideal to have some kind of just a little teeny thing of spray that can help with the wound healing. Have some salve with you that is beneficial for whether it's a bite or you know, some kind of cut, so you can assess or get the healing process going. Should have some kind of a bandage or whatever in a first aid kit. If you're hiking, you know, so many hikes result in some sort of a scrape, wound from a rose bush or from some kind of a tree or branch that scrapes against you. And yeah, you can look at it and say, oh, well, and walk on. But if you just take 2 minutes, spray, put the salve on it, address it, you will save yourself where you would not be subject anymore to infection, and where you can be more comfortable in the time to come. So if you've enjoyed this video and you found some benefit from it, I hope that you give me a thumbs up, like it, comment, subscribe to my channel. I've got many, many videos on herbs and gardening and helping the body heal. And if you feel that there's somebody out there that could benefit from this video, please share it with them. You never know who you're going to help. You can comment, and if you feel that what you want to ask is too delicate to share in a comment, go ahead and email me. I'd love to hear you. So until next time, this is Dr. Mary for the Health of It.